An inheritance that wasn't what it seemed. A brother's secret betrayal, and a family's future at risk. Can the truth heal their wounds, or will it tear them apart? Find out now. It was one of those crisp Denver evenings when the chill in the air felt like a gentle reminder that winter was just around the corner. The air inside Ethan's new home, though, was warm with the buzz of excitement. The place was packed with friends and family, all huddled together in cliques, chatting over wine and finger foods. Everyone seemed to be buzzing, anticipating the big announcement Ethan had promised when he invited us to his housewarming party. And of course I was here too, mostly out of obligation, though I'll admit the house did look impressive. Large windows, modern fixtures, and an open floor plan that screamed success. Ethan had made it, or so it seemed. But I could feel it. That tension in the air, thick and almost tangible, clinging to the edges of every conversation. Ethan wasn't just throwing a regular party. He had something to prove tonight. He stood there in the middle of the living room, raising his glass like he was about to make some life-changing announcement. His grin stretched wider as he waited for the room to fall silent. His eyes flickered to me, and then to the rest of our family, that familiar gleam in his gaze, the one he always had when he was about to steal the spotlight. "All right, everyone," Ethan started, his voice cutting through the chatter. "I want to make a toast. To new beginnings. New homes." He paused, and I knew something was coming. He had that dramatic flair, always acting like he was the star of a show. "And to Grandpa's memory," he continued, his voice dropping a little softer. The room fell into a respectful silence, and we all raised our glasses, the weight of Grandpa's passing still hanging over us. He had just died 4 days ago, and the wound felt fresh for all of us. I felt a lump in my throat, but I swallowed it back. My thoughts drifted for a moment, remembering the man who had taught me how to fish, how to truly appreciate the little things in life. I glanced over at my parents, who were nodding with soft smiles, lost in their own memories. Ethan, though, he looked like this was his moment. "Speaking of Grandpa," Ethan said, setting his glass down on the coffee table with a light thud that grabbed everyone's attention. "I have an announcement to make." A murmur of interest swept through the crowd. People leaned in, eyes wide. Even my cousin Jenna, who'd always been skeptical about Ethan's theatrics, couldn't hide the curiosity in her eyes. She shot me a confused look, and I returned it with a quiet shrug. Ethan was good at making even the smallest moments seem like huge events. But this time I wasn't sure what was coming next. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a letter, the edges a little worn. My heart skipped. There was something about the way he glanced at me, almost too quickly, that made me uneasy. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Something was off. "Before Grandpa passed," Ethan said, his voice now loud and confident, "he gave me this letter." He held it up for everyone to see, his grin widening. "He wanted me to have his vacation home by the lake. The one we all spent so much time at as kids." Gasps and excited murmurs filled the room. My parents beamed with pride, their faces glowing with pride and approval, while Ethan's girlfriend, Teresa, clapped excitedly. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen in place, as if the room had shifted into slow motion. The cabin, Grandpa's most cherished possession. The place I had spent nearly every weekend for the past 3 years, helping him maintain the property, listening to his stories, simply being with him. It was my place too. My sanctuary. But Ethan? He'd visited maybe twice in the past 5 years, always complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi and how there was nothing to do except, as he put it, stare at the damn water. I could feel the blood drain from my face. Was he serious? He didn't even care about the cabin. It had always been my thing, my connection with Grandpa, not his. I looked across the room at Jenna, and her eyes were locked onto mine. She knew how close Grandpa and I had been. She saw my discomfort, and I could see the same confusion mirrored in her eyes. My head was spinning. The room was still talking, murmuring congratulations, but I could barely hear them. I was too lost in my thoughts. The vacation home wasn't just property. It was a part of me, a place where I had felt most connected to Grandpa. It was where I learned his lessons about life, patience, resilience, and the importance of appreciating the little moments. And yet, here Ethan was, taking something that was never his to begin with. Grandpa had given it to me 3 weeks ago. He'd made it official. I had the papers, the notarized deed that transferred ownership of the cabin to me. Ethan didn't know that, though. I hadn't told anyone. I glanced down at the floor, my fingers tightening around the cold rim of my glass. The fake smile I was holding on my face felt heavy. "That's great, Ethan," I managed to say, though it was more of a forced whisper than anything else. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the anger bubbling up inside me. This wasn't right. It couldn't be. I excused myself quietly from the party, pretending to head to the bathroom. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I slipped away, but I didn't care. I needed to get out of there. I needed to go home to check the box Grandpa had given me, to see the deed and make sure I wasn't imagining things. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I left Ethan's housewarming party in a daze, the cheers and conversations fading behind me as I made my way to my car. The cool Denver night air hit me like a slap, but it didn't help clear the fog in my mind. I could still hear Ethan's voice echoing in my head, proudly announcing Grandpa's gift to him. My thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind of confusion and anger. How could he do this? How could he, of all people, pretend to be the rightful heir to the cabin? It wasn't just a house. It was a place of memories, of love, of time spent with Grandpa when we both needed it most. I drove home in a haze, not really seeing the streets or the passing cars. My mind kept replaying that moment. Ethan standing there like he'd won something, holding up the letter as if it was the gospel truth. Grandpa's most cherished possession, and Ethan was acting like it was his all along. He hadn't cared about that cabin for years. I knew that. We all did. But now, suddenly, he was laying claim to it as if Grandpa had personally handed him the keys. I didn't trust my thoughts right now. I needed to see the deed again. I needed to check that box Grandpa had given me 3 weeks ago. The one that held the truth. It was the only thing that could stop this madness. When I got to my apartment, I didn't even bother turning on the lights. My hands trembled as I grabbed the wooden box from the top shelf of my closet. I could still smell the faint cedar scent of it, that comforting, familiar aroma that had always reminded me of Grandpa's study. As I opened the box, I felt the weight of it. The deed. The legal transfer of the vacation home to me. I had seen it with my own eyes. It was real. But as I pulled the documents out and scanned over them, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. The date on the deed, the signature, it all matched exactly how Grandpa had written it in the past, even with his shaky hand. And then there was the letter. Grandpa had written me a personal message, one I could almost hear his voice in as I read it in my head. "You're the only one who truly loved this place as much as I did. I'm giving you the cabin now, while I'm still alive, to make sure there's no confusion later." I had kept my promise. I hadn't opened the box until the right time. And now the right time had come. But then why did Ethan have a letter from Grandpa, claiming the cabin was his? I set the documents down and ran a hand through my hair, staring at the papers in disbelief. Something was wrong. My head was spinning, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the letter Ethan had shown everyone couldn't be right. I had known Grandpa's handwriting for years. It had become shaky toward the end, but it was still unmistakably his. Ethan's letter, though, it wasn't right. The signature was too smooth, too clean. Grandpa's shaky signature would have been a dead giveaway. This was fake. Ethan had to have forged it. I couldn't let this go. I needed to find out what Ethan was really up to. There had to be something else at play here. Without wasting another second, I grabbed the box and headed straight for the cabin. The sun had long since set, but the night wasn't cold enough to keep me from making the drive. My heart pounded as I drove, the headlights of my car cutting through the darkness. It wasn't just the tension between me and Ethan that kept me up. It was Grandpa. He had been preparing something for me, something that was never meant for Ethan. When I finally arrived at the cabin, I parked my car and stepped out, the familiar creak of the wooden steps under my boots grounding me. The place looked the same as always, weathered cedar siding, the quiet stretch of the lake reflecting the moonlight, and the stillness of the trees surrounding us. But tonight it felt different. Felt wrong. The air had a tension to it that I couldn't shake. Maybe it was my mind running wild, or maybe it was something else, something Grandpa had left behind. I walked through the door, breathing in the familiar scent of the place. There was comfort in it, but also a deep unease. I needed to search. I needed to understand what was going on. I headed straight for Grandpa's study, a room I had spent countless hours in with him. The roll-top desk sat there like it always had, full of papers and knickknacks from his years of living. He'd always loved keeping things organized, almost obsessively so. I ran my fingers across the polished wood, remembering the countless times I'd helped him go through papers, read his notes, or even just sit with him in comfortable silence. But something caught my eye. Something I had never seen before. Underneath a pile of old fishing magazines was an old, faded map. I pulled it out, the paper crinkling slightly as I spread it across the desk. It was a map of the surrounding area, one I'd seen 1,000 times, but this was different. It was old, ancient almost. It had markings I didn't recognize. Lines leading to a spot deep in the forest, near the northern edge of the property. And there near the marked spot was a strange symbol I couldn't quite make out. It was as if Grandpa had drawn a secret path for someone to follow. I turned the map over, my heart skipping a beat. On the back, written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting, were a few words that sent a chill through me. Follow the path. The truth lies beneath. I stared at the words, my mind racing. What was this? What was Grandpa trying to tell me? There was a hidden meaning behind this, something I couldn't understand just yet. I looked back at the map and then at the desk, my pulse quickening. I had to follow this. I had to know where this led. Grandpa had left me something. A message, a secret, something buried here all along. I grabbed the map and rushed out of the study, my feet carrying me quickly through the cabin. I couldn't ignore this. Whatever Grandpa had been trying to show me, I was going to find it. I stepped outside and looked toward the forest, the path leading into the woods now glowing faintly under the light of the moon. My mind was racing. If there was something hidden in these woods, something Grandpa wanted me to find, then I had to get there. I couldn't let Ethan, couldn't let anyone take this from me. I wasn't going to stop until I found the truth. Tension was rising. What I was about to uncover in those woods could change everything. But for now, I had no choice but to follow Grandpa's clues. Whatever it was, I had to find it. For him. And for me. By the time I had driven back to Ethan's house, my mind was a storm of thoughts, swirling with frustration, confusion, and a nagging sense of betrayal. I had already seen the truth in Grandpa's deeds. And yet here I was, standing once again on the doorstep of the man who had orchestrated this twisted game. The front door swung open, and there Ethan stood, looking more unsettled than I had ever seen him. The smirk he usually wore was gone, replaced with a nervous tension that made my stomach tighten. "Avery," he said, his voice almost too calm. "What's going on? Where do you go? Everyone's been asking." I didn't answer immediately. I just stepped inside, the familiar sights of his home suddenly feeling like an echo of all that was wrong. My eyes scanned the room quickly, landing on our parents, who were gathered in the living room, sipping wine and chatting softly. Teresa, Ethan's girlfriend, was sitting with them, looking a little uncomfortable. It was as if they didn't realize the storm that was about to hit. Ethan followed me in, his expression shifting as I moved closer to the center of the room, where I could finally face him properly. "Everyone's been waiting for you," he said, voice trying to hold on to its usual bravado. Sit down, Ethan," I interrupted, my tone flat and cold. "We need to talk." I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned to our parents and Teresa, then back to Ethan. His face was a mix of confusion and apprehension. He could tell something was off, something more than just the obvious tension between us. "Where's the letter, Ethan?" I asked, my voice tight with the simmering anger I'd been holding in since that moment at the party. "The one you showed everyone tonight. The one where Grandpa supposedly gave you the cabin." He hesitated. His eyes flicked around the room, a nervous glance here and there, and then back at me. "What are you talking about?" "I don't." "The letter, Ethan. You know exactly what I'm talking about," I snapped. "The one you're pretending is from Grandpa. The one where he supposedly gave you the lake house." The room fell silent, all eyes now on Ethan. Our parents looked at him, their expressions changing from curiosity to confusion. Teresa shifted uncomfortably in her seat, unsure of how to react. Ethan's eyes flickered between all of us, his confidence starting to unravel as the weight of the situation became clear. I didn't think it would go this far," he muttered, lowering his gaze. His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in the facade he'd been holding up. I crossed my arms, watching him closely, my heart racing. You didn't think it would go this far? You've been lying to us, to Grandpa, to everyone, Ethan. Why? Why would you do this? His voice faltered, and he looked at me with a mixture of guilt and frustration. I just wanted something, Avery. I wanted something that mattered. Grandpa always favored you. He spent all that time with you. You were the one he loved. I couldn't stand it anymore. I wanted the cabin, okay? I thought if I had it, maybe I'd finally matter. My chest tightened. The pain in his voice was undeniable, but so was the betrayal. I had to take a deep breath to steady myself before I spoke again. Ethan, you didn't need to lie about it. Grandpa wasn't some possession to be claimed. He wasn't a prize. He was family. And if you felt neglected, why didn't you just talk to him? Why didn't you come to me? Ethan's eyes welled with tears, but he quickly wiped them away. I tried, he said, his voice low. I tried so many times, but you were always the one with him. You were always the one he turned to, and I was just in the background, never really seen. I felt the air leave my lungs as his words hit me like a wave. He had been carrying this pain for so long, but I hadn't realized. And while it didn't excuse what he'd done, it gave me a glimpse into why he'd felt so lost, so desperate. But still, the lies, the deception hurt too much. You knew about the deed, didn't you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You knew Grandpa had already given me the cabin. Before he passed. Ethan's eyes widened, his jaw clenched. He looked away, his hand fidgeting nervously with the sleeve of his shirt. Yeah, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I found out a few weeks ago. I went to Grandpa's lawyer. I knew about the deed before he died. But I couldn't just let it go. I had to do something. I thought if I could just. If you could just what? I cut him off, frustration boiling over. Steal it from me? Pretend Grandpa gave it to you, even though you knew the truth. I didn't want to steal it, Avery, Ethan said quickly, looking up at me with desperation in his eyes. I wasn't trying to take it from you. I wanted to test you. To see if you were strong enough to stand up for it. To stand up for what you believe in, what Grandpa would want. I needed to know if you could really protect it. My mind reeled. I couldn't understand what he was saying. It felt like I was drowning in confusion. You wanted to test me? I repeated slowly, incredulously. What set this whole thing up like it was some kind of challenge? Ethan nodded, his face full of guilt. I thought if you fought for it, if you truly believed in what Grandpa meant to us, you'd prove you were worthy of it. I didn't want to just hand it over and have you not care. I wanted to see if you were really strong enough to hold on to it. I couldn't process it all. It was as if everything I thought I knew about my brother was slipping through my fingers. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. You've been lying, scheming all this time, and for what? A test? A game? I know it sounds crazy, Ethan said softly, but I thought I had to do it. I thought I was proving something, proving that I mattered too. That I wasn't just the second son. The one who never got the attention. The one who was always in the shadows. I could see the pain in his eyes, and for the first time, I truly saw the depth of the hurt he had been carrying all these years. It wasn't just about the cabin. It was about so much more. But before I could respond, something else caught my eye. On the coffee table, hidden beneath a pile of papers, was another envelope. A thick sealed one. I reached for it, recognizing Grandpa's familiar handwriting on the front. For Ethan. My heart skipped a beat. Ethan looked at me, confused, as I pulled the envelope from the pile. I tore it open carefully, my fingers trembling. The letter inside was short but strikingly clear. Ethan, I know you've always felt overlooked. But the cabin was never the prize. What you need isn't the lake house. It's your own purpose, your own path. I've always believed in you, even if I didn't show it. This is for you. Use it wisely. There's a check inside for $25,000. Use it to find your own way. Don't chase after what doesn't belong to you. Build something of your own with love. I stopped reading. The words hit me harder than anything Ethan had said. I looked at my brother, who was now staring at the letter with wide eyes. His hand shook as he reached for it, reading the words again, this time aloud, his voice cracking. Grandpa. He knew, Ethan whispered. He knew I'd try this. There was silence in the room as we all let the weight of Grandpa's final words settle in. The truth had been staring us in the face all along. I handed Ethan the letter, watching him carefully. Grandpa always believed in second chances, I said quietly. But you have to make it right, Ethan. You have to take that chance. Ethan nodded slowly, his face pale, but there was something different in his eyes now, something I hadn't seen before. Maybe, just maybe, he was ready to take that first step toward healing. The letter from Grandpa wasn't just a message about the cabin. It was a message about family, forgiveness, and finding your place in the world, no matter how lost you might feel. I had no idea where Ethan's journey would lead, but I hoped this was the beginning of something better, for both of us. The days that followed the confrontation with Ethan felt like a whirlwind. The air in the house seemed lighter somehow, though the tension between us lingered. There was a strange stillness to everything, like a storm that had passed, leaving everything soaked and heavy with the aftermath. Ethan and I hadn't said much to each other after that night, but something had shifted in the way we both looked at each other. I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet, but I could feel the crack in the wall between us. I could see that Ethan was really trying to be better. We had sat there in silence for a long time, after Grandpa's final letter, both of us absorbing the weight of his words. The shock still hadn't worn off. It was almost like Grandpa had known all along that we'd need something like this. A moment to wake us up, to force us to face the truths we had been avoiding for years. Ethan was staring at the letter, his eyes still wide, as if it had physically knocked the breath out of him. "I'm sorry, Avery," he had said, breaking the silence. "I was so stupid. I thought if I could just have it, I'd prove that I mattered. That I wasn't just the guy always in the background. But I was wrong. I didn't think about you. I didn't think about Grandpa. I was so caught up in myself that I almost lost everything that actually matters." I had watched him closely, the sincerity in his voice cutting through the bitterness I'd been carrying. He wasn't just apologizing for the lie. He was apologizing for years of distance, of misunderstanding, for not being there when Grandpa needed him, and for not being there when I needed him. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Ethan," I had replied, my voice thick with emotion. "But I want to. I want to believe that things can be different between us." He nodded, his eyes brimming with regret. "I'll do whatever it takes, Avery. I'll make things right. I'll start over. I know I've made a mess of things, but I swear I'll change." I didn't know if I fully believed him yet, but in that moment, I could see the cracks in the armor that Ethan had built around himself. Maybe this was the first real step toward healing for both of us. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time I felt like there was hope. It was 2 days later when I got the call. The phone rang while I was sitting in the living room, staring out at the lake, lost in thought. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, and for a moment, I felt a sense of calm that had eluded me for weeks. My hand shook slightly as I picked up the phone. "Hello," I said, my voice still soft from the quiet afternoon. "Avery." The voice on the other end was unfamiliar but somehow authoritative. "This is Harold Thompson. I'm the executor of your grandfather's estate. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I sat up straighter. The name sounded familiar, Grandpa's lawyer. My mind raced. "No, not at all. What's this about?" "I've been instructed to contact you both regarding your grandfather's wishes," Harold continued. "It appears there's something that needs to be addressed. Something he left for you and Ethan to do together." I felt my pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" "Well, it's part of your grandfather's final wishes," he said. "He left a plan for you both, something important. He wanted you two to work together on it before you could fully inherit anything. There's a task he felt was necessary for both of you to complete, before you could truly understand what he was leaving behind." My head spun. "A task?" I echoed. "What kind of task?" "I can't give you all the details over the phone," Harold replied, his voice calm but serious. "But it's something that will help you both find common ground. It's a matter of reconciliation. You and Ethan need to work together to honor your grandfather's legacy, and he wanted to ensure that you both would do it in a way that would restore the bond between you two." I stared at the phone, unsure of how to process what I just heard. "What is this task? What exactly do we have to do?" "You'll receive a letter soon," Harold said. "Your grandfather's instructions. It's a personal matter, something that will require you both to confront the past." You'll understand when you see it. But it's not just about inheritance, Avery. It's about healing, and about both of you growing into who your grandfather always hoped you'd be. Before I could respond, Harold had already hung up, leaving me standing there, stunned. I wasn't sure whether to feel angry, confused, or relieved. What did Grandpa want from us? What task could possibly bring Ethan and me closer together after everything that had happened? I paced around the cabin, my mind racing. Was this his final test for us? Was this the real legacy he wanted to leave behind? Not just the cabin, but something far deeper? A few days later, the letter arrived. It was hand-delivered by a messenger, wrapped in a simple brown envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, Grandpa's. I hesitated for a moment, staring at it as if I could feel him there, just on the other side of the paper, waiting to tell me everything I needed to know. When I opened it, I could hear his voice in my mind as clear as day. Avery, Ethan, I've left you a legacy, but it's not just about the things I've accumulated. It's about what you both have to learn. Your bond as brothers has been tested, and it will continue to be. But if you truly want to carry on what I've built, you'll have to do more than just take what's mine. You need to learn to trust each other again. You need to confront your past, together, and understand what family truly means. I've arranged for you both to meet with someone who knows more than I do about what's been left unsaid. You'll understand once you're there. I'm not leaving you instructions on how to solve this, only that you need to be honest with each other, and honest with yourselves. This is your final task. There was no mention of money or possessions, no mention of the cabin or anything material, just a promise that Ethan and I would have to confront something we had been running from for too long. The task wasn't about the inheritance. It was about the relationship between us, the one we had almost lost. The day after I received the letter, Ethan and I sat down together, both of us silently processing what Grandpa had asked of us. It wasn't an easy thing to digest, especially after everything that had happened, but we both knew it was something we couldn't ignore. You ready for this? Ethan asked, his voice steady but uncertain. I don't know, I admitted, but I think we need to do this. For Grandpa. And for us. We both stood in the living room staring out at the lake, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't standing alone. Ethan stood next to me, and though things weren't perfect, they were better. And maybe that was all we could ask for right now. The story closed with a sense of cautious optimism. Ethan and I weren't fixed overnight. The road ahead would still be difficult, but there was hope. Hope for reconciliation, hope for healing, and hope for a future where we could finally be the brothers Grandpa always wanted us to be. The cabin was still ours, but it had become something more. A symbol of what we could rebuild together. And so, as the sun set over the water, I knew Grandpa's legacy wasn't just in the things he left behind, but in the lessons he had passed on through his final challenge. Together, Ethan and I would face it, and we would find our way.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for updates on new videos. See you next time.